Most people I know who are serious about being prepared, they've got the gear, they've got the food rotation down, they've tested their filters, they've got their go bags packed, and I'm not saying any of that is wrong, but there's something that doesn't come up enough in those conversations, where you're standing when things actually get difficult. Because here's what I've come to believe and see after watching this stuff for years. It's not just what you have or own, it's where you are. And those two things are not quite the same conversation. The grid is getting more centralized, not less, all in the name of efficiency. Supply chains are thinner than they look. And in a lot of cities, the kind of quiet social trust that holds a neighborhood together, it's been decaying for a while. You've probably seen this yourself, maybe not in a dramatic way, just little things. The way people don't make eye contact at the grocery store anymore. The way the mere news of a single storm can empty shelves for 3 days due to panic buying. Maybe it's nothing, but it's worth noticing. I'm not here to tell you the world is ending. I'm here to share 5 things I think are worth thinking about if you're considering a move, or if you're trying to figure out whether where you live right now actually makes sense long term, especially when the shit hits the fan. My name is Shane, and these are just my notes. The first thing is distance, real distance. There's a pattern that shows up in almost every major disruption, whether it's a hurricane, a blackout, or something more serious. People move, and they move outward from wherever the problem is concentrated. It is the natural thing to do. Well, at least that's what most people thinks. Think about it practically. If things got bad in a major city tomorrow, most people would get in their cars. Some would walk. And the question is, how far can they actually get before they can't get no further? Realistically, most people in a real emergency with gridlocked roads and a single tank of gas are going to cover somewhere around 100 miles, maybe less. That's not a dramatic claim. That's just simple logistics. So if you're living within that radius of a city with 500,000 people or more, you're not really in the countryside. You're in the path of wherever those people are fleeing to. At first, it don't seem like a big deal. You're 40 miles out. You've got land. You feel removed from it. But 40 miles on a clear road is 40 minutes. And in a real disruption, that is not far enough. What you actually want is distance plus friction. In other words, natural barriers. A mountain range between you and the nearest major hub. A river with only a few crossings. Roads that aren't on the main route out of anywhere. Maybe you have noticed this, but a lot of rural services are being scaled back. Post offices, clinics, small county programs. The official reason is usually budget cutbacks, but the effect is that it becomes more harder to live outside of population centers. That's worth paying attention to. When you're looking at a place to land, look for somewhere that's genuinely off the radar, not famous for being a prepper destination, not featured on any list, just a small county close enough to a real working town that you can trade and connect, but far enough out that the nearest city's problems don't reach you easy. If you can hear highway noise from your property, you're probably too close. If you can see the glow of city lights on the clouds at night, you're definitely too close. The second thing is water. And I mean water you actually control. I was talking to someone last year who had a beautiful piece of property, good land, good location. And then I asked him about his water. He said, "Oh, I'm on a well." And I said, "Who manages the meter?" He didn't know. That's the thing. A lot of people assume that a well means independence. But in a growing number of states, private, wells are being brought under regulatory oversight. Smart meters are being installed. In some areas, there are already rules about how much rainwater you can collect on your own land. I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying it because it's happening quietly, and most people don't find out until they're already in the middle of it. What you want is something simpler and harder to interfere with. A year-round spring on the property, a gravity-fed creek, a deep well that runs on a hand pump, or a small solar setup that you own outright. And here's something people don't think about enough. Look upstream, literally. Pull up a map of any property you're considering and look at what's above it. If there's a large farm, an industrial operation, or a managed reservoir upstream from your water source, your independence is more fragile than it looks. In a real disruption, those entities use what they have first. You want water that flows to you without anyone else's permission. There's a legal concept called senior water rights. It's worth understanding. It means your access to a water source was established before newer developments, and it can't easily be superseded. It's not a guarantee because laws can change, but it's a better starting point than nothing. The physical setup matters just as much as the legal one. Buried cisterns, a secondary filtration system, the ability to move water to your garden by gravity without a pump, without electricity. A property with a clean, reliable spring is worth more than almost anything else you can put on a piece of land. That's not an exaggeration. That's just what water means when you can't take it for granted. The third thing is energy, and this one's a little more nuanced than people think. Here's something I've noticed. A lot of people put solar panels on their roof and feel like they've solved the problem. And solar is great. I'm not against it. But most standard rooftop systems are tied to the grid, which means when the grid goes down, your panels shut off automatically. That's how they're designed. So you've got this visible, expensive system on your roof, and in the moment you actually need it, it doesn't work. That's not independence. That's just a different version of the same dependency. What actually works is simpler and less visible. A wood stove that heats your home without a circuit board. A masonry heater that holds warmth for hours after the fire goes out. A house that's oriented south with deep overhangs, so it stays livable in winter without much help at all. I've been in houses like that. You walk in during February and it's 60 degrees inside, no heat running. That's not magic. That's just good design. If you're looking at properties, ask about the orientation. Ask about the insulation. Ask whether the heating system has any electronic components that could fail. A house that stays warm on its own is worth more than a house with a complicated system that depends on parts you can't get locally. There's also a regulatory piece here that's worth knowing. Some counties, particularly in states that have become popular with people looking to go off grid, are starting to require that homes stay connected to the utility grid. It's framed as a safety issue, but the effect is that you can't fully disconnect even if you want to. Look for unincorporated land. Look for counties where those rules haven't taken hold yet. They exist. You just have to look. And whatever setup you build, keep it low profile. Blackout curtains. Battery storage in a basement or root cellar. You don't need to advertise what you have. If the power goes out in your area and your house is the only one with lights on, that's a problem. The fourth thing is the people around you. And this one might be the most important. I know the image of the lone survivor is appealing. I get it. But it's not realistic. Even if you have everything you need, you eventually have to sleep. You eventually get sick. You eventually face a problem that requires a skill you don't have. And if you're alone, that's where things fall apart. The community around you is part of your preparation, maybe the biggest part. What you're looking for is a place where people already know each other, where the local hardware store owner knows the farmer down the road, where there's a mechanic who fixes things the old way without a diagnostic computer, where people trade favors and goods without thinking much about it, because that's just how things work there. I drove through a small town a couple of years ago, just passing through, and I noticed something. There was a guy in his front yard rebuilding a tractor engine, not a new tractor, an old one. And across the street, someone had a hand-painted sign out front selling eggs. And down the block, there was a small butcher shop that had been there since the 70s. That town had something that a lot of places don't. It had people who knew how to produce things. Not consume things, produce them. That's what you're looking for. Avoid places where everyone commutes to a city. Those communities look rural, but they're not really. They depend on the city for their income, their food, their identity. When the commute stops, they're in the same situation as the people they left behind. Look for working landscapes, farms, small mills, trades, people who fix things rather than replace them. As things shift economically, the ability to trade directly, hand to hand, without going through a digital system is going to matter more than most people expect. A community that already operates that way, even partially, is ahead of the curve. You're not just buying land, you're choosing neighbors. Choose carefully. The fifth thing is your exit. And I know that sounds strange when we're talking about finding a place to settle, but here's the thing. No location is permanent. A wildfire, a chemical spill, a flood, an emergency declaration that changes the rules overnight. Any of those things can turn a good situation into a bad one faster than you'd expect. The people who get stuck are the ones who only plan for staying. What you want is a secondary option, not necessarily a second property, though that's ideal if you can manage it. It could be a trusted friend's place in a different county, a pre-scouted campsite on public land where you've already cached some basics, medical supplies, water purification, enough food to buy you time. The key is that you know how to get there without using the main roads. This is something I'd encourage you to actually do, not just think about. Walk your secondary route. Drive it at night. Know which logging roads connect to which back roads. Know where the bridges are and which ones might be closed in an emergency. Main roads are the first thing that gets managed in a serious disruption. We're already seeing the technology for remote road closures. If your only way out is a single paved highway, that's a vulnerability. Walk your routes twice a year. Things change. Roads wash out. Gates go up. You want to know about that before you need to use the route, not during. A place you can't leave isn't a sanctuary. It's just a different kind of trap. So those are the 5 things: distance, water, energy, community, and an exit. None of this is about fear. It's about thinking clearly while there's still time to think clearly. The cost of land in quieter, more self-sufficient areas has been going up. The regulations around off-grid living have been tightening in a lot of places. The window for making these moves on your own terms is real, and it's not unlimited. I'm Shane. These are just my notes from paying attention for a long time. If any of this resonates with you, stick around. We're going to keep documenting this step by step for people who want to make thoughtful decisions before they're forced to make rushed ones. Stay grounded, stay aware, and keep your options open.